Hello and welcome to the EduTalk series hosted by Biotone, Biotone EduPartner Program, and massage industry experts. With the continued interest and popularity of the EduTalk series, Biotone continues to support virtual learning and building massage community by connecting you with industry experts who share their knowledge and expertise on topics not only for class discussion, but career success. Tonight's experts are Dale Alexander and Anne Bramham. Anne has been in practice since 1978. She's a certified Dr. Vodder School instructor and promotes manual lymphatic drainage, MLD, to spas, plastic surgeons, and clinics, which led to opening one of the first U.S. hospital lymphedema centers, and founded ASTECC, Advanced Spa Therapy Educational Curriculum, in 1995, and authored Cortiva's Spa Curriculum, plus received American Spa's 2019 Educator of the Year. Dale has been in practice since the 1980s, specializing in resolving chronic somatic problems. He's author of The Inside Out Paradigm and has published over 100 articles with Massage Today. Dale was selected as the 2016 CE Provider of the Year by the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education and was inducted into the World Massage Festival Massage Hall of Fame in 2023. Additionally, Dale has presented past EduTalk series, both for massage and diabetes, which are in the archive library on biotone.com under the EduTalk tab. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, feel free to chat questions and comments during the presentation, which Anne and Dale will address at the end of the presentation. With two speakers tonight, Anne will be going first and then turning the screen over to Dale. And with that, Anne, welcome, and Dale, welcome. Thank you so much. I will exit the screen and come back when the presentation is ended and we're ready for chats and comments. Here we go. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. And Donna, thank you. And thank you to Biotone for inviting me to be on this EduTalks. I'm very happy to be here and I'm really happy to share. So the one thing I want to say really is in manual lymph drainage, my interest was piqued way back in the 1970s when I was in my first training. And I listened to my first lecture on the lymphatic system and I was in awe. And basically I am and continue to be in awe of this system and what we can accomplish with it. So with that being said, and again, my thanks, and I'm so happy to be working with Dale in this too. He brings so much to the program. So I am going to sort of kick off and start talking work. So basically, I want to start with the fact that we're a water body. Dr. Vodder basically emphasized the principle that we were 2/3 water. So water is literally the source of life. Everything in, on, and above this earth needs water to exist. And whether plants, animals, or we humans, we all share a common task. And that common task is literally the transportation of water through our bodies. And so whether it was the ancient cyanobacteria in the oceans with a very simple open circulation to the more evolved species such as we humans and animals, basically who now have a closed circulation, the nutrition is always taken from the water in which the cell bathes. And so the average in adult being between 60 to 70% water, higher at birth, we're over 78% at birth. It's really essential that we keep these life-giving waters flowing, and keeping them flowing keeps us hydrated and hopefully prolongs the life of the cells. So moving on, I want to just take a quick look at the blood, which we refer to as the river of life. And we refer to it as the river of life because, of course, it contains all the nutrients that are essential to all of the cells. And we have in our bodies somewhere between 35 to 50 trillion cells. And the miracle of this delivery system is that it delivers nutrients to each of these cells and oxygen every split second. And so this river is coursing through our vessels, and we're completely unaware of its dynamic activity. And approximately 1.5 gallons is pumped every minute, which equals 2,000 gallons every 24 hours. And so vast is this vessel system that if the end of the vessels was laid end to end, it would literally wrap around the world 2.5 times. And so the heart, of course, is the pump that's pumping all of this. And in the heart pumping this, basically, it's really imperative to sort of look at it and realize that this is the first organ that developed in order to provide circulation to the developing embryo. So it happens around the 3rd week. And then that's followed when the neural crest closes and the neural tube is formed, which develops the brain and the spinal cord. And this goes on through infancy as well, this development. And so realizing that this is really such a vast system, it's easy to understand that the circulation is one of the first things to break down, and maintaining constancy is a task. And so, going the wrong way. So now I want to look at the blood's partner and in maintaining balance, and this is the lymphatic vessel system. And the lymphatic vessel system is responsible for maintaining both the hydrostatic pressure of the blood and the oncotic pressure of the blood. And that means, therefore, that the lymphatic system is responsible for the fluid balance in the blood system, the fluid balance in the connective tissue, the blood volume, protein circulation, long chain fatty acids are returned via the lymphatic system. And then we have the removal of wastes and pathogens. It's a transport system which literally moves metabolic wastes out of the system. But by the time lymph is returned to the terminus, the end of its journey, it's vital nutrients that are being reabsorbed into the blood at that point. So I mentioned it's completely responsible for the protein recycling, except with one area in the body, and that is the brain. The brain is actually capable of maintaining and degrading and rebuilding its own proteins. So if we look at the brain as an organ, the brain weighs approximately 3 pounds, but because of the fluid it bathes in, it's reduced to 5 something ounces. And so it's actually 73% fluid mass within the brain tissue. So we look at it, it's composed of tissues, fluid, and a massive 170 billion cells. 86 billion of these cells are neurons. And the brain is hungry. It's a really hungry organ. It demands 20% of our daily oxygen, 25% of the body's energy on a daily basis, and 15% of our cardiac output. And so the arterial pumps to the cranium, of course, are the carotid artery. But as we go forward, we can see that the carotid arteries pour into the circle of Willis, which then feeds the cerebral arteries. Now, this pulsation is very important because this is actually what's going to drive the fluid in the brain. And the brain vascular system is different than that of the body in as much as the blood-brain barrier has very tight junctions. This means that while there is some ionic movement through there, large substances such as proteins would not pass through there. So now we see why the brain builds its own proteins and degrades its own proteins. There are no lymphatic vessels in the brain. They are in the area of the dura, but they are not in the brain as we know it. And so now we have to look at the mechanism for the brain and why people talk about the lymphatic system. And they talk about it because the lymphatic system shares similar principles or tasks as the lymphatic system. So I said the vascular system of the brain was different. It's different because there is a perivascular space which is surrounding every single vessel. And so this perivascular space is formed by the endothelial cells of the blood vessel wall. That forms the inner wall, whereas the outer wall is formed by the end feet of the astrocytes, and those are the also a glial cell. So basically, if you look at the diagram to the left, you can see that it shows the tight junctions, it shows the perivascular space, and then it shows the astrocytes right there. So let's just talk about fluids for a minute. I mentioned at the beginning that Dr. Vodder didn't distinguish really between the interstitial fluid and lymphatic fluid. He looked basically at this ocean that we have flowing within us. And so fluids are really named for where they are. So the cerebrospinal fluid is the fluid of the brain. And this is actually produced in the choroid plexus of the ventricles. Approximately 0.5 liter is produced every day. And this is the fluid in which the brain bathes, from which the brain takes its nutrition, and from which I assume brain metabolites are disposed of, or should I say deposited. So it's interesting because the brain does not rest at all. It doesn't rest at night. We might sleep at night, but the brain doesn't rest at night. In actual fact, it consumes the same amount of energy as it does during the day. But what it does at night is it downscales, which allows a form of brainwashing to occur. So this is meaning, all of this process is occurring, and what we're not doing is computing and taking in information and making decisions. And so what actually happens is that there is an expansion of fluid at night. So that during the day, the space is more constricted, but at night it's expanded. And this increases a pressure, a tissue pressure, which encourages the movement across the parenchyma into the perivascular space of the venous system. So once this perivascular space of the venous system is receiving that which has been washed out, that will then be passed into the removal systems. And it was always assumed that that would go into the venous system. And we have to look at that and see where it's going exactly, actually. So let's just take a look at that flow. But before we go on to looking at the flow, I want to just look at the current stats that are being published regarding cognitive decline. 50 million people across the globe are affected by neurodegenerative disease. And the current stats are that 30% of people over 85 are affected. Well, of course, we've been living longer in the past years, so reaching 85 was is not one of the great achievements that it was. But unfortunately, the predictions are that anybody who does reach that age, out of 3 people, one of them will have some form of neurodegenerative decline. And these rates have increased significantly in recent years. And the problem is that they've been looking at it for quite some time, but they haven't found a solution in medication. They basically have found some medications that may help in a short time period, but no medication that actually resolves the problem. And so there's a completely different approach being taken by several renowned doctors today, Dean Ornish being one of them. And this is the relationship of the food that we eat, so the relationship of the gut to the brain. And Dean Ornish is currently involved in raising funds to support a reversing Alzheimer's program through diet. And then other doctors that are involved in this are the Sherzais, and they go by the brain doctors, and they too promote a good nutritional diet, but also a multi-pronged approach, looking at all things, really, whether it's exercise, lifestyle, what we're doing. And so these are some of the factors that people look at: sleep deprivation or insomnia or sleep apnea. And sleep disturbances are looked at as a problem, because if that's when our brain cleansing happens and we're not sleeping, then of course it's problematic. If it comes when we look at high blood pressure, it's a sign of it's an inflammatory condition. High cholesterol, the same. So we can look at chronic inflammations as possible precursors or indicators of potential neurodegenerative decline. And it's not just our lifestyle that's the problem. We are submitted to all sorts of toxins from this industrial era that we never were previously. And so our external environment is causing problems too. So when they look at it, the focus is on the protein aggregation, the collection of these tau proteins, which have these sticky filaments. So that might create some problem with the movement of water. If you think about it, if you think about a stream, I use this image all the time. You think about a wonderful stream bubbling out of the mountain, pristine, clear, until it gets stuck in a rock pool. And then when it gets stuck in a rock pool, its viscosity changes. We'll see scum forming on the top. We'll see bacteria buzzing around. It becomes an unpleasant aspect. So if water is not in motion, then we have the opportunity for bacteria or stagnation. And so really, when we look at this, we have to think about how is this fluid flowing across. And so one of the people who I've been really impressed with and listening to is a researcher called Macon Nedergaarde, and she actually presents that or should I say cognitive decline is possibly caused by a dirty brain. And I like that. I like that expression. Anyway, so the question is it the tangles causing the congestion? Is it lack of sleep that things aren't moving? I don't know. I simply don't know. But why do I think lymph drainage may be helpful? And the reason I think manual lymph drainage might be helpful, because way back in 1986, a guy called Miles Johnson, who was an osteopath, actually injected a tracer dye into the central nervous system. He followed that dye through the subarachnoid sheath, the suboccipital lymph nodes, into the perineurium. You can see the olfactory, auditory, and optic canals here, and also on the walls of the arteries and veins. And so what he actually determined from this tracer dye is that 40% of it was removed via the olfactory, optic, and auditory nerves, and the epidural lymph vessels. So, and that 60% was removed by the Virchow-Robin spaces, and these Virchow-Robin spaces are those that occur in the around the perivascular space too, the vasa vasorum and the subarachnoid sheath. So, where does that bring us to? Well, if you look at the picture on the left, you can see quite clearly the suboccipital lymph nodes. We can see the drainage pathways from the eyes, which lead to so this is the optic nerve drainage as well, will come in this direction, through to the parotid and to the area below the ear that we term the profundus. We term it the profundus because it's profound. It has both superficial and deep lymph nodes there, and they collect all of the fluid that's flowing on the pathways I've just mentioned, and also from the skin of the face and head. And so basically, these are being collected into the cervical lymph nodes, which will transport lymph through these many chains into the terminus. And so we have almost 200 lymph nodes in this area. It's a very concentrated area because it's a very important area. But also, if you look to the picture on the right-hand side, it illustrates the vagus nerve. Well, we've got used to seeing blood vessels, veins, and nerves travel in the same direction, or should I say travel alongside each other, not necessarily in the same direction. Basically, what we're looking at is the vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve is found right around where we have this profundus region. So right at the parotid and angle of the jaw, so behind that, below the ear, into the cervical region. And so, or the foramen of the jugular vein. So when we're looking at this, what we're looking at is how we're affecting not just the lymphatic system with our technique, but also affecting the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, known as the wandering nerve, is the conversation nerve between the brain and the gut. And it's a feedback system sending messages in both directions. Now, why is that helpful to us? Extremely, it's known for its effect on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our relaxation system. And it's also, as I've just said, part of the enteric nervous system. This area is important to us because we know that we can effect tremendous relaxation through this. We don't just increase drainage, we actually also increase blood flow without raising filtration. And we, the art of relaxation We basically help our clients with the secondary effects on the digestive system, and we help induce sleep. So manual lymph drainage is really, to me, a significant helper and has much potential in how it may be helpful in clearing the pathways. And so finishing this, the conclusion of this is, I want to say how apt it is that Dale comes in with his wonderful tubes and sacs theory, which he presents, which is such a great complement to clearing the pathways. And also to say that the fluid connection is actually an advanced MLD class, and a prerequisite is the basic MLD. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to turn this over to Dale, and I exceeded my time, and I'm so sorry.
You did great. You did great.
Thank
So
you.
I'm wondering, okay, let's see, slideshow.
I've got to stop my screen.
Okay. Danielle, am I on?
Hi there. You are on your, I'm not sure if you hit the share screen green button yet.
Aha. Okay. Maybe that's what happened. Slight technical difficulties, folks. We will get it together here. Okay. Everybody can view this. And let's give another shout out to Biotone for their sponsorship of this educational series. It's amazing what they've done over the past, really, 5 years, if I understand it correctly. The essence of what we're going to be doing tonight will be to outline the cornerstones of the anatomy that surrounds this course, and we're going to be describing some of the techniques in brief. Because of how much there is, we're going to tiptoe through the treetops. On a personal note, I was lucky enough to find my sense of meaning of life through the work as a body worker and massage therapist, and it is time for me to pass along the secrets and discoveries that clients and teachers have taught me. So a way to think of all vascular relationships, all chronic problems, for new blood to move in, old blood must first move out. So I'm going to be using the cursor, and I hope it follows me. You're going to be working with the plates and sutures of the cranium to help facilitate the flow of both arterial, venous, lymphatic, and cerebrospinal fluid. And I want to point out this line, the upper palate, then the sphenoid into the temporal, along with the jaw in between, and then to the occiput. These are all ports of call in the anatomy of the protocol. And this is actually the suture, which on the other side is what cradles the jugular foramen. This is our end therapeutic goal, folks, is to remove the compressive forces that tend to close pack this. Here we see the internal jugular veins coming down out of the brain, joining with the other fluids, brachiocephalic, into the superior vena cava, over to the lungs, where the real magic of physiology takes place. CO2 exchange for oxygen, nutrition and hormones added back to the ventricles and out to the rest of the body. It is a wondrous system. What we don't really conceive of enough is the jugular foramen is rather vulnerable. And this is where I want to draw your attention. And this picture really highlights the vagus in its outflow and the spinal accessory. And one of the things for us to appreciate is that the SCM and the trapezius are innervated by a cranial nerve. Thank you, Stanley Rosenberg. But notice in particular the angle of the SCM. It has a leverage to close pack the jugular foramen. And this will not only stunt the outflow of vagus, but also the spinal accessory. This took me many decades to figure this out. And until you disimpact that suture and that actual orifice, then you're not going to get as good a result. Of course, concussions and whiplash always get our attention. I've had 6 concussions, 1 put me in a coma. But what we don't really appreciate is that falling and impacting one's body against any surface is going to create a whiplash through the neck and including the head. Of course, the SCM and the trapezius, they are the brain's protectors. And as we will discover, the esophagus has a role in how all of this works. In particular, here's the SCM abutted to fascially, the fascial package of the carotid sheath. And even though there's more in this, they're highlighting the common carotid, the internal jugular vein, and the vagus. And of course, that's bilateral. And here is the esophagus in the middle. Look at just the purchase that it has for literally, if a person has a whiplash that's significant enough, it will involve all of these structures. So appreciating the relevance of what we've done thus far and the fact that the esophagus blends into the pharyngeal raphe, going literally up to the cranium itself, to this, the sphenobasilar junction. And of course, here's the jugular foramen. Easy to see how that's going to create pressure, flanked by the SCMs. Katie, bar the door. Okay, I too want to appreciate the vagus. It just does so much. It provides homeostasis to our heart. It's one of the key elements that we can do as body workers to help heart health, and understanding that the vagus monitors the digestive system. And even recently, the literature has been speaking of how it interfaces with the kidneys and the spleen. That's an amazing thing because it's watching for inflammatory cycles that begin, and then through neurohormonal means, then the central nervous system is able to quell them. I love this picture of Anne, so I repeat it again because it's like looking at a black and white photo, but it just has so much girth and depth to it. Flipping the face around, because we're on the other side, this is where the drainage from those lymph vessels from the face into the architecture, venous architecture of the brain, and look at all the avenues that are available for disseminating this fluid. It's truly astonishing. Looking from above, then we can look at our objective, which is enhancing the directionality of the fluid flow. Back and down and around. Back and down and around. We're going out either side then of the jugular foramen, and this is the epitome of what we're doing in the cranial vault techniques, and we will do that by inducing gentle pressure gradients. Also, I always wanted a decoder ring when I first started studying anatomy and bodywork, and that's really how Anne and I try and teach. We're endeavoring to give you the basics so that you can make sense of human anatomy. It is complex, but at the same time, there's an elegant simplicity to it all. So the falx cerebri and the tentorium are the brain's endoskeleton. Basically, your venous system is organized around that, and we will make that even more clear. I love this slide because it's almost like a stratification of a geological dig. And this will help you then to comprehend the use of pressure, thereby your palpation skills, and where you are and which layer you're trying to affect. Let us remember that the cerebrospinal fluid flows in the subarachnoid space. Now we get into the occiput on the atlas axis, and C2 through 7. Hey folks, all of these structures can influence that jugular foramen, which is right about in here. Now the upper cervicals, they are packed with activity. Here we see the exiting vagus having its first communication with the superior sympathetic ganglion. This is really important. This is why upper cranial work or upper cervical work is so important. And here we have the vertebral artery snaking its way up with a double dog leg to supply 20% to the hindbrain and upper spinal cord. We've got the common carotid bifurcating at around C4, the external supplying the head, neck, and face, and then 80% coming from the common carotid to supply the brain. And as mentioned before, you're going to learn intraoral techniques from both Ann and I, but this is the one that really does facilitates the decompression of the jugular foramen the most. They all do to some degree, but this is really the clincher, and it can be easily experienced. And once you do, you never forget it. So these are some larger concepts. The Saxon tubes theory of stress and trauma emerged in the mid-90s. I was looking for a way to go, how do I talk to people and describe how the internal organs really affect the structural integrity of the body in all the various ways? And of course, the answer was staring me in the face in the anatomy. All of our major organs, heart, lungs, brain, spinal cord, and about half of the organs in the abdominal pelvic cavity are in sacs. And it occurred to me that, wow, inside the other organs are made up mostly of tubes and tubes that connect them. So the sacs and tubes theory of stress was born. Now, what do the sacs do? They cringe, okay? Think of the last time you were excited. That's when you actually consciously felt it. When we get hurt, the body sedates that sensation and you don't feel it as much. In the face of stress and trauma for tubes, they shorten, they narrow, and very often twist, especially in the face of whiplash. So this is just written out what I've spoken, and we'll move on. Again, reprising the notion of the esophagus joining the pharyngeal raphe, and actually when it shortens, then you're pulling the head down on the neck, the length of the esophagus, it becomes the stomach. It's not a separate organ. From our mouth to our butthole, we are one tube. And the exquisite placement of the esophagus behind the heart, in front of the spine, and juxtaposed next to the jugular foramen. Most people have never really made sense of the fact that the heart enfolds, literally folds around the esophagus. I've experienced this, as evidenced in my 47 years, to be associated with anxiety and panic attacks. People with dementia are so often filled with anxiety. And I can't say that everybody is going to be immediately calmed by this technique, but it does help. It's helped everybody. And the vagus actually utilizes the esophagus as a trellis and scaffolding as it descends. So learning how to stretch the esophagus also assists vagal outflow, as well as the decompression of the jugular foramen. Another concept that emerged was that the visceral organs are moored to bones, and that they are linked one to the other from the cranium all the way to the pelvic floor. I began calling this the body's central linkage. And the organs are connected by overlapping suspensory ligaments, and they inevitably participate in the elements of compression that pull on the joints, as well as congestion, in such a way that there is an eventual discoordination within the nervous system as we age. So here are the vertebral pericardial and pleural ligaments coming off the front of the neck, the heart in its absolute Siamese twin function to the diaphragm. And you're going to learn a few techniques with the sternum, because these ligaments are important, and space for the heart and lungs is essential for them to do their job. The next concept really Dr. Barral rocked my world in 1986 with a simple but elegant statement that the pressure within the thorax must be less than that of the abdominal pelvic cavity and the cranial cavity for systemic circulation to be normalized. Restoring this relationship is crucial to all problems that people have and can be accomplished with simple myofascial techniques. These techniques both vent in the posterior diaphragm the pressure from the thorax, thereby the equalization between the cavities, and reducing the tensions within the thoracic cavity itself for the thoracic duct, which carries about 75% of the lymph fluids. The added bonus is that as you relieve the congestion within the thorax, you're going to be diminishing the external tension of the chest wall and back. So also not really fully recognized, this is another one of those secrets, folks, that we understand the connection on top of the diaphragm, and I'm calling this the Oreo cookie. Here's the wafer, here's the cream, and guess what? The other wafer is the liver gallbladder, because it actually hangs from the diaphragm. Understanding these subtleties and not so much subtleties in anatomy will help you to help your clients that much more. And of course, the liver gallbladder is right on top of the inferior vena cava, which is bringing raw blood products back to the heart and to the lungs so that blood can be renourished and reconstituted. Now we have to include the pancreas in all of this because the inferior vena cava and normal in its normal organization in the body is behind the pancreas as well as the liver gallbladder on top of it. Learning to stretch this common bile duct has many benefits for all kinds of problems that the body has. So these are the anomalies, okay, within the pancreatobiliary system, and they would not have existed for Dr. Netter to have, through his many decades of dissecting people, have come across this many variations. And the long and short of it is our species almost didn't survive twice. And Mother Nature, in her wisdom, had to experiment, because for us to derive nourishment from almost anything we ingested is paramount for us to move forward and to survive. John Upledger gave us a golden key as well, and that is the brain will hold on to old blood if the arrival of fresh blood is delayed. Hence the importance of understanding the techniques and the relationships between the chest and the neck. And those specifically tend to be the SC joint, the first and second ribs, and the sternal angle. So again, SC joint, these oftentimes become flipped up a little bit, which creates turbulence in the flow. And at the sternal angle, this is a nexus point of pressure. And guess what's behind it? What's behind it is the aortic arch. Now stop for a moment and just marvel at the amazing complexity of this. Here's the circle of Willis that Ann pointed out. And our job is, fourfold. We need to help the arterial push that comes from the aortic arch by helping the heart have enough room to eject the fluids with enough force. So our task is to stimulate both arterial, venous, lymphatic drainage, and in the brain, the cerebrospinal fluid. It's a wondrous cycle that we can affect really throughout the body, especially in the brain. I want to say thank you to Michael Shea because he shared with us these more fabulous venous pictures. And as an embryologist himself pointed out that the first lymph nodes appeared along the carotid arteries and jugular veins. And repeating another picture from Ann's, and there's a lot of them. And of course, when you watch her and her expert hands, it's amazing how well she can communicate these ideas. So the summary is reducing the compression of this jugular foramen. It is the drainage plug. When we sleep, this is when our body renews itself and gets rid of the waste materials. We do this by restoring the pressure differentials between the body cavities, reducing the tensions of these structures and mobilization of the cervical and TMJ joints, the creation of space within the thorax, neck, and cranial vault by inducing pressure gradients within the cranium, thorax, and abdomen. And of course, there is much, much more. And as I look at my clock, I'm going to go one more slide. The real dilemma of aging distills into this, in my opinion. Not enough renourished blood is reaching the enormous trillions of cells of the human body. So we have roving ischemia happening. People hurt, they have aches and pains. As long as they're coming and going, it's really not a big deal. That's kind of part of how it works in the aging process. But our job is to help the raw materials for renourishing fresh blood to get back to the heart, because they tend not to, for all kinds of reasons. One of the things our species became very, very good at was adhesions and scar tissue as self-repair mechanisms. And unfortunately, fluids pool and pocket around these adhesions and scar tissue. So there's a timing and volumetric element to the raw materials getting back to the heart in a timely fashion. What general medicine learned over 100 years ago is the heart can only pump out what it gets back. And of course, the waste product buildup within our tissues and organs, and especially within our brain, this is our primary thesis relative to how we can contribute possibly to at least stabilizing the decline and memory loss of cognitive dysfunction, maybe even some reversal. We're hoping so. So here's my contact information and a quick flash of my teachers. Thank you all. And back to the general conversation. Danielle?
Well, thank you, Dale, and thank you, Anne, for your presentation. Dale, let's stop screen sharing your presentation. I'll include all your contact information in tomorrow's follow-up. And for those that have not attended an EduTalk previously, tomorrow, watch your inbox. About midday, you should receive a follow-up email with a link to this recording, articles that Dale has written, and Anne's PowerPoint, as well as their contact information. As Dale has previously presented EduTalks, I will include links to those talks as well. It all seems to tie in together, doesn't it, Dale? And we do have a few chats and some thank yous. Melina is asking, please share the types of medical conditions this treatment addresses.
Why don't you go in?
The kind of medical conditions, I'm just going to make this very simple and say, basically the most important thing that it addresses is stress, because I would say that 90%, it's not me that says this is a medical figure, 90% of modern disease is caused by stress. Stress is the trigger to a great deal of inflammation. We reduce the stress, we reduce the inflammation. That's my 1-2 simple answer. What else may occur during there? We have had, but it's definitely recorded that we lower blood pressure. It's definitely seen that we've improved tinnitus and sinus conditions for sure. I mean, basically what we are looking for here is to provide the greatest movement out of the cerebrum into the collectors as that's possible, really. That's it. We want to clear any metabolic waste out of the tissues. That's what causes stagnation.
Other elements for you to consider are certainly chronic headache patterns, cervical stenosis, heart problems themselves. I've been lucky enough to work with a number of people who have regained their quality of life, even though they have congestive heart failure. People have come to me for trying to avoid having shoulders, knees, and hips replaced. Their anxiety and panic attacks that I spoke to. I work with everything just like everybody does, but those are the areas that I've found. And the other special area is people who have not recovered, okay, from trauma. Trauma can have such a long echo, and these techniques and this protocol can help facilitate building a ground floor of, once again, enhancing that whole systemic circulation so that people have a chance for their bodies to heal. And of course, the brain's central to that process.
How does hydration or being dehydrated play into this, Anne?
Well,
You spoke so much about hydration at the beginning.
one of the things, basically, if you look at it, we can say that as we age, we dehydrate. You can say aging is simply drying out. But the reality is that by actually stretching tissues, we encourage the moisture movement and production. So basically, MLD has a two-way stretch involved in it, and that's how hydration is helped. I'm also going to say it helps normalize the pH balance of skin and interstitial fluid. So, yeah.
She covered it.
Averall has said, I have trained with these brilliant teachers and you will want these techniques in your hands. And thank you forever. There were some other thank yous as well. So let's say someone comes into you and they're just not feeling top of their game. Is this where you would start with them? Would be, I mean, where's the beginning point? Where is the assessment? How do you know what techniques to go to?
Well, I mean, basically, when it comes down to it, you're asking me if you ask me as an MLD practitioner, what I would choose is, okay, what is it that's bothering you? I mean, I'm going to treat virtually everything with manual lymph drainage. I can't see what I can't treat with manual lymph drainage, except that which is an absolute contraindication. And those are very few. And so we looked at this in connection with the brain, but in all honesty, the research demonstrates that manual lymph drainage removes lactic acids more efficiently than other forms of massage. And so, again, my question is, or no, my answer is, what would I not treat and why? And the assessment begins with the person. Each person is an individual, and what is their issue. I work with whiplash too, and basically to have the benefit of Dale's techniques and manual lymph drainage working together, it's just really helpful. It's just the benefits are doubled. It's as simple as that. I do want to just add one thing, actually. When Dale was talking about the movement between the heart and the cerebrum, or the arteries in the cerebrum. If there are postural problems or imbalances, then the signaling is actually affected too. So we look at the flow, but we're looking at the brain signaling as well here. So
I'll take a crack at answering that question. Tissue texture, range of motion of the limbs and of the trunk, the torso, and where people say they experience pain, which is not necessarily the source. But if you get, when you were a kid and you got stung by a bee, you didn't want your mom to kiss your forehead when it was your hand that got stung. So to some degree, we're working with people, and we need to listen carefully to what their needs are and what they believe they need. And they're hiring us, they're paying us good money. And if we have the library to help them, then we can move away from and explain what we're doing as we do it to some degree. Because the bottom line, if they feel better, they're going to come back because they want even more.
Exactly. I haven't seen any other chats or comments come in. Just thank you for fascinating information. What I'd like to do is well, let me mention our upcoming Edu Talks. On May 6th, we will have Sally Spurgeon presenting on breast trauma, a massage therapist's role in recovery. On May 13th, for our EduTalk Diabetes series, we have Phyllis Cook, and she'll present on diet changes can control type 2 diabetes. And both of these RSVPs will be open tomorrow. The EduTalk Diabetes series RSVPs are open now. So please join us there and watch your inbox for invitations. Anne and Dale, in wrapping up, is there anything further that you would like to share with the audience?
Just thank you, and just look for upcoming classes in the email. We've got a full clinical wellness class on MLD in June, and Dale and I are presenting the fluid connection in October for people who have already taken the foundational or basic MLD. So
Okay, and the foundation basic MLD training is through your organization?
It's through ASTECC, yes, and you'll find my information on the PowerPoint. So yeah, you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
then
please, folks, do go study with her. You want to take this course because it has so many ramifications for everybody, including those in your life. We need as much feedback from people to work with this so that we can better streamline it and tailor it to make it more effective. The people who have cognitive difficulties in this country, they're growing daily. So help us in this pursuit. Thank you so much.
Yes.
well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And I hate to wrap it up. This was so interesting and many levels above my head, but I really appreciate you sharing your information with all of us. And again, everyone, please watch for the follow-up email tomorrow with copies of Anne's PowerPoint, Dale's sharing with us 3 articles, and their contact information and link to the recording will also be in that. Again, join us May 6th for Sally Spurgeon's Breast Trauma, a massage therapist's role in recovery, and May 13th for the EduTalk Diabetes series, Diet Changes Can Control Type 2 Diabetes, and that is with Phyllis Cook. Anne and Dale, thank you so much for your presentation this evening. And I'd like to mention as well that in December 2nd, Anne will be presenting on MLD, manual lymphatic drainage. I'm not off the top of my head remembering the exact title, but please keep December 2nd open on your calendar to join us then. Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to everyone for participating in today's EduTalk, and join us again going forward. Thank you and be safe. Wait a second. Here is Demetrius with the discovery of the SLYM layer. How has that change or modified technique to MLD to address decongesting the brain?
Nothing has changed or modified the techniques. The techniques virtually remain the same. It's just the application of where the techniques are utilized, and that's it.
Okay, well, Dimitri is saying thank you for that. And thank you again to everyone and for all you do. Be safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.